The classic era of American thrash wasn't just about the big four. There were other bands putting out incredible records and influencing the scene, but still getting overlooked. So let's talk about 9 of those lesser-known thrash bands, including how I discovered each one, and I'll give out some album recommendations as well. Stick around. First up is Forced Entry, formed in 1986 in Seattle, Washington. The band released 2 studio albums and an EP and had a few reunions over the decades, with their current status being unknown. So Forced Entry came out right after Sanctuary, but before the grunge explosion in their home city, but also sounding like neither. They had a slight prog thing going on, but without being annoying or showy about it, and still keeping things heavily rooted in pummeling thrash. Some might compare their technical edge to Coroner, but maybe throw in a bit of ferocity as well. They also had some minor success on Relativity Records, and their video for Never a No But the No did receive some MTV airplay, mainly on Headbangers Ball, though not in heavy rotation. They never did big tours, but they weren't strictly a club band either. Sadly, I never saw them live, but seriously wish I had. Also, I probably discovered this band during my college radio days, just to think about it. Anyways, this band could simply do no wrong, as both studio albums are crucial releases, with 1989's Uncertain Future being a bit heavier, and As Above, So Below from 1991 being a bit more technical, but still totally crushing. After that, you should definitely check out their 1995 EP, The Shore, as well. And I have a copy of Uncertain Future here. This is a reissue from Floga Records back in 2016. This also has the Shore EP tacked onto it, which is pretty cool. I'll show you the vinyl here. Classic black, custom labels, very nice. I would also like to get As Above, So Below on vinyl. I don't know if any of the American labels or distros put it out. A lot of times in the early 1990s, you have to go to European variants for a label to find the vinyl. But we'll see. Who knows? Anyways, there you are. Forced Entry, Uncertain Future. Next is Faith or Fear, formed in 1982 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The band released 2 studio albums and an EP and are currently active. So my first exposure to this band was absolutely through their appearance in the home video concert release of Combat's Ultimate Revenge 2, which also had performances from Death, Dark Angel, Forbidden, and Raven. But even among those bigger names, Faith or Fear made a real impression on me, and their debut album Punishment Area seriously delivered, with their straight-ahead US thrash sound, aggressive riffs, gruff staccato vocals, and even some occasional groove elements. And since they were also distributed by Under One Flag in Europe, that meant metal fans on the other side of the Atlantic likely discovered them as well. They also briefly toured with Sepultura on their Beneath the Remains tour, so they got some exposure that way. Before the release of the album, the band also had their track Dehumanized featured on Metal Massacre 9, that well-known Metal Blade compilation series I've mentioned many, many times on this channel before. However, the underground is where they largely stayed. So you should definitely start with Punishment Area from 1989, but their second record, Titanium from 2012, is pretty great too and vastly overlooked. Unfortunately, Titanium never got a vinyl release, so you'll be checking that one out on other formats. Still, it's well worth your time. Anyways, of course, I have a vinyl copy of Punishment Area. This is an original Combat Records issue. Great album. There's the reverse for you there. Some great tracks on here. Lack of Motivation is an amazing song, probably one of my favorites here. I like CDS quite a bit. The title track is great. Also Dark Side. Killer album. So there's the vinyl. I also have it on cassette, which I've had probably since the beginning. And I might have got this first on cassette and then later on vinyl. That makes a lot of sense to me. There's the cassette unrewound, of course. And you know, the usual J card, track listing, and the lyrics for you. And I also have the soundtrack to Ultimate Revenge 2, where I first heard them / saw them because I saw the video as well. I don't have the VHS on Ultimate Revenge 2, which kind of sucks a whole lot. There are the other bands there as well. Killer compilation, the soundtrack, of course, as well as the VHS. Very, very cool. If you haven't seen the show, it's probably on YouTube. You should probably check it out. Anyways, that is Faith or Fear with Punishment Area. Next up is Wrathchild America, formed in 1981 in Baltimore, Maryland. The band released 2 studio albums, with their current status being unknown. So I definitely discovered this band seeing them live back in 1989 in support of Testament, and was definitely blown away by their performance. Of course, the tour made sense since both bands were on Atlantic Records, which for a band like Wrathchild America was kind of unexpected given their unorthodox approach to thrash. They definitely pushed past genre limits with the occasional experimental touches, including moments of funk, reggae, jazz fusion, and blues. But like Forced Entry, they leaned heavily into thrash, often of the technical variety. There was also a bit of a goofy side of this band that may or may not have mattered to genre fans. Even still, when they were fast, aggressive, and heavy, they were beyond impressive. They did produce a couple music videos from their 3D album, both Spy and Surrounded by Idiots, which got some play on Headbangers Ball at the time. But they got dropped by Atlantic in 1992, like many thrash bands for major labels, and drummer Shannon Larkin went on to Ugly Kid Joe, and then on to Godsmack. But the band did continue for a time under the name Souls at Zero before they finally broke up in 1996. Also, some might know that the band was originally called Wrathchild, but had to add the America part after a legal battle with the British band known as Wrathchild, issues that also delayed the release of their first album by an entire year. So, while 1989's Climb in the Walls certainly has its moments, and I would tell you to absolutely check that one out, their 1991 release of 3D pushes just a little higher up the charts for me, so maybe start there. Even still, I don't have a copy of 3D, but I do have the debut on CD. Here it is, Climb in the Walls. Great album. Favorites on this one, the title track. I love Hell's Gates a lot. Silent Darkness, Smothered Life is really cool. There's also a cover of Pink Floyd's Time on here, which isn't too bad, actually. And we'll, you know what a CD looks like. There's the inset there for you. Again, great album. I do love 3D more, and I would like to get that on vinyl one day. It's kind of a tough one to get. Speaking of which, this is 3 songs from 3D. This is a promo EP of sorts. It has Surrounded by Idiots, an edit version on, as well as Desert Grins and Drain Time on the reverse. Had this for a while. I got this during my college radio days, obviously. And the teeth on the CD holder are rather fragile, but there you go. Very, very cool. So, Wrathchild America, check them out. Next is Sentinel Beast, formed in 1984 in Sacramento, California. The band released 1 studio album, with their current status being unknown. So I found out about this band from blind buying their debut studio record, Depths of Death, back when it was released in 1986. Of course, a lot of attention got paid to the fact that their singer was female. That wasn't really common in thrash at all back then. But Debbie Gunn's rough and powerful voice could easily compete with any guy singer in thrash at the time, to be sure. I mean, she had some of the tonal punch and aggression of someone like Wendy O. Williams, but could also actually sing, perhaps in a vein similar to Chuck Billy. As for the band's sound, there is definitely a speed element to their thrash, but also some occasional leans and an wobble with some of the gallop riffs and the melodies. In fact, they even do a sped-up cover of Iron Maiden's Phantom of the Opera, which is already a speedy little number on its own. Before their album dropped, Sentinel Beast were also on a Metal Massacre installment, such being Metal Massacre 7, with the title track to the debut album. Very cool. And since they have only 1 album, again, Depths of Death, that's what you should check out. Definitely a hidden gem in the world of classic thrash. In fact, here it is. This is an original copy from Metal Blade Records. There you go. Killer songs. The title track's really great. I love Depths of Death in general. Sentinel Beast is probably my favorite song on the B-side. And I do love the cover of Phantom of the Opera, man. It's actually faster than the Maiden version. I remember when I heard this as a kid, I was like, wow, faster. Insane. But very cool. To show you the inner sleeve as well as a picture of the band. And some credits on the reverse. So yeah, if you've not checked out Sentinel Beast, you should do that, for sure. Next up is Meliah Rage, formed in 1987 in Boston, Massachusetts. The band released 9 studio albums and a live EP, and are currently active. So as someone who grew up in that other big city in Massachusetts, such being Worcester, I was huge into the metal scenes both there and in Boston, so it wasn't hard to find out about Meliah Rage. They were a known entity, and they were definitely up and coming in the club scene. So when Kill to Survive came out in 1988, we all bought it and loved it. They also fit into that slew of bands that incorporated trad and US power metal influences into their sound, similar to Metal Church, Flotsam and Jetsam, and Sanctuary. Speaking of the last, Meliah Rage at one time did share a record label with Sanctuary and Epic Records for both their debut as well as their sophomore effort, Solitary Solitude. They also did music videos for the tracks Beginning of the End from the first album and The Witching from the second record. They did tour with a lot of heavy hitters, including Slayer, Megadeth, Testament, Morbid Angel, and Metal Church, among others. So they had both the major label and the live exposure on their side. But perhaps because they were in between genres or because the music industry changed so much at the time, they ended up back in the underground, where they still exist, in case you're interested in checking out the more modern output from the band. Needless to say, you should check out Meliah Rage's first two studio albums, both 1988's Kill to Survive and 1990's Solitary Solitude, which are utter masterpieces. Then you should definitely check out their 1989 live EP, Live Kill, which is also worth the listen. As for Meliah Rage in my collection, here's the debut record. Great album. I've had it since, as I said before. Love the cover, by the way. Is the Meliah tribe real or not? Some people couldn't figure that out. But there you go. Shot of the band there and the track listing for you. Songs of this one, Beginning of the End, of course, was the single, but I gotta tell you, Bates Motel just rips on this thing. And it's probably my very favorite song. I think it's a lot of people's favorite songs. A lot of people I've talked to that have heard Meliah Rage, like especially the early stuff, have been like, Bates Motel is an amazing song. But the whole album's really great. 7 songs in total. Yeah, very cool. And of course, if you need the label, there it is, Epic Records. So there you go, Meliah Rage. Next is Reverend, formed in 1989 in Seattle, Washington. The band released 2 studio albums, 2 EPs, and a live album, and are currently active. So I should mention right away that, like Meliah Rage, Reverend also mixes in traditional heavy metal into their thrash, which fits well enough in the era and the overall sound of the genre. Of course, as many know, Reverend was formed by vocalist David Wayne, who at the time had just left Metal Church. Funny thing is that Wayne formed Reverend with an ex-Heretic member, while another ex-Heretic member, Mike Howe, replaced Wayne on vocals in Metal Church. So this is a rather incestuous situation with the bands. Sadly, David Wayne died in 2005 from complications following an automobile accident, but he did briefly rejoin Metal Church from 1998 to 2001 to record his final studio album with that band, entitled Masterpiece. But as for Reverend, it was a really great band that sadly didn't put out a lot of studio material. I mean, granted, they're more or less still around, but more as a tribute act than anything else at this point. But still, maybe they're worth seeing. Let me know in the comments if you've seen them live. In modern day, of course. As for recommendations, definitely start with their first full-length record from 1990 called World Won't Miss You, but also don't pass up their self-titled debut EP from 1989 as well. Also, check out their music video for Scattered Wits to get a better idea what they sound like. And of course, here's that first full-length album of theirs. This is World Won't Miss You. It is on Charisma Records. That's right, I really had to look, so I'm like, what's Charisma Records? There's the back for you. Obviously, it's a radio copy. When you play it, say it. And there's the insert there for you. Some great tracks on here. Scattered Wits is really a cool track. Another Form of Greed was a favorite of mine. I remember playing that one a lot. And all that. Rude Awakening, great song. I would highly recommend that one, probably the most, is Rude Awakening. So the track listing in red in very small text. Hopefully you can read it. Who knows? But there you go. Reverend, World Won't Miss You. Next up is Blind Illusion, formed in 1978 in San Francisco, California. The band released 3 studio albums and an EP, and are currently active. So I discovered this band in 1988 by hearing that they had acquired former Possessed guitarist Larry Lalonde, and since I was a huge fan of Possessed, I wanted to hear what Larry would do next. Of course, the band had a bit of history before all of that, and had always been led by Mark Biederman, but never put out a studio record until '88. Also in the band at the time was bassist Les Claypool, who, along with Larry, would leave Blind Illusion and concentrate on Claypool's main band, Primus. But Blind Illusion is definitely a thrash band, but with some progressive structures in there, while never losing the heaviness of its primary genre, especially for the 1980s. Still, that prog influence is what gives us the sudden tempo shifts and intricate guitar work throughout the debut record, making it stand out from some of the more basic, paint-by-numbers thrash bands of the time. As for why they never really found any fame, it could have been a combination of being too early, too strange, and too hard to categorize. Of course, if this first record came out today, it would likely meet with a far more positive influence, which is one reason why you should check it out now. So, if you only hear one Blind Illusion album, you should make it their debut album, The Sane Asylum. And of course, here's a copy of that album, The Sane Asylum, on Combat Records and Under One Flag. We'll show you the vinyl there. There she is with the gray camos. We also have an insert, or an inner sleeve rather, picture of the band, some kooky text, lyrics on the reverse. Great tracks on this one. The first 3 songs, it really is front-loaded hugely, but the rest of the tracks aren't slouches either. Vengeance is Mine is probably my very favorite song on this album, but do love The Sane Asylum and Blood Shower as well. It's probably a toss between Blood Shower and Vengeance is Mine. I would check out both of those tracks. But of course, put a gun to my head, and it's Vengeance is Mine. Great stuff. I also do have the cassette. This is my original cassette. I bought this in 1988, and then I bought the vinyl many, many years later. We got to look at this. There's the J card there. Nothing on the reverse. And the cassette. There you go. Very cool. Blind Illusion. Still around, believe it or not. There you go. So I also wanted to briefly talk about 2 other bands that I unfortunately don't have in my collection, but simply have to be mentioned in a video like this. Starting with Defiance, formed in 1985 in Oakland, California. The band released 4 studio albums and are currently active. So I discovered this band during my college radio days in the early 1990s with their second album, Void Terra Firma. This is back when there was also a swap in singers, having recently gained Steve Esquivel, later of Skin Lab, whose vocal style is eerily similar to that of Chuck Billy at times. Killer Bay Area thrash metal that got severely overlooked. I would definitely recommend their first 2 albums, both 1989's Product of Society, as well as 1990's Void Terra Firma, for the best that Defiance has to offer. But definitely start with that second record first, as it's definitely the stronger of the 2. Also want to mention Intruder, formed in 1987 in Nashville, Tennessee. The band released 3 studio albums and is currently on hold. So this is another band I discovered during my college radio days, first hearing A Higher Form of Killing, then quickly after that their Psycho Savant record. I should also mention vocalist Jimmy Hamilton, who definitely has a real set of pipes, shifting from mid-range thrash delivery to higher wails, reminiscent of Anthrax or early Violence. Of the 3 studio albums of this band, I would highly recommend Psycho Savant, but A Higher Form of Killing is also worth your time. They were on the Metal Blade roster of bands throughout, but sadly didn't release anything else after 1991. But as with many of these bands, you should still check them out. So if you're a die-hard metal fan, especially of the classic era, you no doubt knew about most, if not all, of these bands. But for the rest of you, which of these acts are totally new to you? And would you like to check them out further? Maybe you have some favorite albums from one or more of these bands, or maybe you've even seen some of them live. Let me know about that, but also let me know which other lesser-known or even underrated US thrash bands you think I should have mentioned. Tell me all of that and anything else that applies in the comments below. Of course, if you're just tuning into my channel for the very first time and you have no idea what this is all about, my name is Matt. This is the Accusation Network, where each and every week I do videos on metal vinyl collecting, but also classic and modern metal in general. If that sounds really cool to you and you want to see more content like that, please subscribe to this channel. Maybe also hit like on this video and share this and other videos of mine with your friends on social media. I would actually appreciate that, actually. Of course, as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.